it's easier for me to be vulnerable to like my partner or to like a female friend that I have than it is to be vulnerable to like an average male friend.
Why is that?
That's a good question. You said that, and I'm like, man, that's a good. I don't exactly know. I think part of it is I don't want you to look at me like I'm soft, you know, and like I think I have never really been around women who view, you know, being emotionally intelligent and expressing it yourself makes you less of a man. But I have been around lots of men that feel that way and make that very clear. And I think you said it. Yeah. Playing football is exactly where that stuff originates. You know, I remember, my dad doesn't remember this, but I remember when I was like, I was a very emotional kid. I was crying. I cry at everything. But my dad brought me over.
This is why niggas don't talk about that.
So my dad, you know, I kind of, when I was younger, I grew up in the suburbs. So my dad was like, we got to toughen this kid up. So he brought me over to North Minneapolis for me to start playing football.
Give some context of what North Minneapolis is.
So suburbs, all white people, very, you know, what you would expect the suburbs to be. North Minneapolis is a predominantly black area. It's not bad by any means, but it is rougher.
It's the hood of Minneapolis.
That's exactly. It's the hood. And so he brought me because he had a friend who coached a team there. He brought me there so that I could start to play. And I was really young. I think I was like second grade, and that was like even younger than the other kids. The other kids were like third or fourth graders. So we're leaving the car, and he's like, you know, if you cry on the football field, you're done. Like, I'm taking you out. You're not playing. And I think it was a good message for football because football is just a sport that values toughness. Yeah. But it's hard not to. And I want my son. If my son plays football, like, he's got to be tough. He's got to take that. You know, it's just football. You know what I mean? It's just what it is.
At the end of the day, you've never seen a weak football player.
Right.
You have to be tough. That's just
you have to be tough.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah.
And so I don't think my dad was wrong in saying that. I do think that I took that outside of it.
Yeah.
And then years later, I remember I broke my wrist. I was in 7th grade, and I was throwing, and I hit somebody's helmet, and they landed and broke my wrist back. And I had like one tear come down my eye. And my dad like rushed down to like make sure I was okay, and I had like wiped it out because I didn't want him to see that I was crying. And it's funny that like, and I've had conversations with him, and you know, I think I took that too far. I misunderstood it because then we got to college, and my senior year we played like this really tough game, and we ended up losing. And I saw my dad, and we made eye contact, and we both immediately started crying. And we gave each other a hug because it was just like, I was hurt. I was banged up. It was freezing outside. We battled and we lost. And he
made me cry.
You know what I mean? It's just like one of those games where, man, you leave you literally leave your blood on the field. Mm-hmm. And I'm already hurt going into the game. And he knows how hurt I am, even if I'm not necessarily telling other people. I did tell him. And we see each other and we just start crying in each other's arms. So I know that like my dad is not saying don't be tough, or don't be, you know, or you don't have to, it's okay to be vulnerable. But I think that I kind of took that along with other messaging about football, about societal expectations, things like that, and then internalized that and had difficulty expressing any type of sign of weakness to other men.
And realizing that being tough is a tool. Right, that's all it really is, and like you have a lot of tools in your toolbox, and to use toughness when it needs to be used.
That's a great point because I think I benefited a lot in college and in life. You know, going through work. You know, sometimes just saying, "Hey, you know what? This sucks. I got to suck it up, and I got to get through it." That's a great thing. That's a great thing to be able to draw upon. But it's hard to flip that switch off. Yeah, you know, and that's where I think, you know, when we go back to loneliness. And when I said earlier about the struggles that I have, well, I got to take this to the chest, and I got to keep pushing. And you know, I love my family, but I don't want them to worry about me. So, and I know I'm gonna be okay. So I'm just gonna keep this one to the chest. Yeah, and then I'm miserable, you know, for it. So
I'm thinking about just like growing up. Like, do you remember like the first time you saw your dad cry?
Yeah, when my cousin got killed.
Like, I specifically remember hearing my dad cry for the first time. It was hard to explain kind of what she was, but someone very close to him had passed away. And I remember my mom told me, and then she went in the room, was like, I'm going to tell your dad, like, just go to your room. And I remember hearing it, But like before that, or I mean, besides that, like I don't really necessarily remember seeing my dad cry till, I don't know, maybe, to be honest, I don't know. It's been a while. Like maybe my senior year of high school, one of the years I came back from college, maybe, you know, but like just saying that, like you could probably name like that one time. Like it's, you got to really think about like when you see the men in your life, and especially we all acknowledged earlier, like how similar we are to our fathers and the connection we have. It's like you don't see men cry, especially the one man you look up to the most. You don't like, what do I look like being over here crying? You know what I mean? Which just kind of leads to everything you just said, you know, like now that's, you're building your tools to be tough. And I think I'm a social worker by trade. So just thinking of the psychology of people, and then you think of like childhood, adolescence to young adulthood, like the developmental stages and the how influenced you could be at that time. Like if you don't see any of that, and then like Ricardo just said, you know, like I'll cry sometimes when we laughed. If at 15, if someone laughed at me, if I brought up crying, I would never mention it again.
Right.
Ever. And so it's just like stuff like that. It's just the stigma and the stereotype around all that stuff. And then what we see in our own lives and the generation of behind us that, you know, that we're learning from, or ahead of us that we learn from, not showing it already. That's where a lot of that stuff I think comes from. Like, even in like your relationship, like how many times have y'all, like we're all in committed relationships that have been multiple years. Like I've only cried in front of my, you know, fiance a couple times, and we're about to sign a lifelong contract. You know what I mean? Like it's just not something that we did on the regular. It wasn't accepted. It wasn't a social norm like it is kind of now, where we talk about therapy and being vulnerable. Like that's really only something that's come about the last 5 to 10 years. So
and I think what's fascinating is like, even though it's coming out more and more in like society today, like I feel myself wanting to cry more, but I just can't.